Hello and welcome to the White Collar Fitness Radio, the ultimate podcast for professionals striving to achieve optimal performance in today's fast-paced age. I'm your host, Bruno Dalladoni, online body transformation specialist and founder of The Health Coach Fitness. I'm here to help you optimize your health and fitness, even if you're short on time.
Good morning, everyone. Assuming you're listening to this in the morning. Today, we're discussing just basic nutrition. So I had a question sent to me where the question was along the lines of, I want to understand a little bit more about nutrition because at the moment I eat healthy and we cook from scratch, me and the missus, but that's as far as my thinking about healthy food goes. So I'd like to understand a little bit more. So I thought I'd cover that off here today because that is in fact something I get either asked a lot or I speak to new clients or, people in the gym a lot. And it's just that. It's like, we cook healthy, we cook from scratch. And as previously mentioned on the podcast, there is a difference between eating healthily and eating for goal purposes. You can, in fact, lose body fat eating McDonald's every day. Is it the healthiest way of doing it? Probably not. But you can do it. So it's understanding that there is a difference between one and the other. They often overlap by a large degree. But there is and there can be a difference. So you eat healthy. What now? Well, again, it's really understanding what you're trying to achieve from your nutrition. If the whole point is to just go by your day to day and not have a particularly in-depth thought about nutrition, then there are some things you can do to make sure that you're hitting the basics. You're hitting like all the baselines you need. And that goes also to cook from scratch, but that's as far as it goes. But before we get to that, which we'll get to a little bit later in this episode, I want to just give you guys a little bit of a very basic background on the things you almost could do with having in your mind somewhere stored in there for those times that you do want to think about nutrition in some more depth. You've got that information stored. Now, that's stuff that obviously me as a nutrition professional, as a coach, stuff that is constantly on the forefront of my mind, but it's stuff that you don't need to have at the forefront of your mind. As long as you have it in there somewhere, it'll present itself when you need it or when you want it, but it doesn't have to be, you don't constantly have to be thinking about it for it to be effective. And so let's start with the basics. What are carbohydrates? Carbohydrates, they break down into effectively sugars. I covered this off in an episode a few days back. They effectively break down to sugars. Now, they're useful for brain function, being that your brain and your central nervous system use carbohydrates as its main fuel source. They're useful for training performance because when you contract the muscle, having some carbohydrates in there will facilitate the generation of, quite literally energy for your muscle to contract. And it just generally makes life a little bit easier having carbohydrates in your diet. If you take all the other aspects, all the physiological aspects out, on your day-to-day basis, you'll find carbohydrates pretty much everywhere. Bread, potato, pasta, any root vegetable, fruit, the stuff is everywhere. So you go to Pret, you go to Costa, you want to grab a sandwich, carbs. You want to grab a salad, there's usually either rice or pasta, carbs. Right, it's everywhere. And so avoiding the stuff tends to be a little bit harder. So the way I like to think about carbohydrates is like this. Carbohydrates tend to be, not always, but they tend to be the carrier for your proteins and your fats. So it's the bread for your sandwich. It's what's carrying the filling into your face. It's the pasta for your sauce. You wouldn't just sit there and eat a bowl of carbonara sauce. You need a carrier to deliver that sauce into you. So hopefully you can start to see where I'm going with this. Then we've got protein. Protein breaks down into amino acids. Now, if you look at gym stuff more than the average person, you have come across BCAAs before. And BCAAs obviously stand for branch chain amino acids. And amino acids are the key part we're looking for there. So, protein breaks down into amino acids. You've got 20 of them. Your body can't make some others. And protein, obviously, so protein tends to be the stuff that gives things a little bit more substance. So, what do I mean by that? Well, meat, usually. Meat, fish, stuff like that. Poultry, obviously. Now, if you're vegan and you like the animals, trigger warning, skip ahead by about 20 seconds, 30 seconds. But you can think of protein where it comes from animal stuff, like animal sources, as flesh, right? As muscle tissue. Because that is in fact what it is. It's muscle tissue. So if you can find yourself some muscle tissue anywhere, whether it's fish, whether it's poultry, whether it's beef, whether it's venison, pork, it doesn't matter. Well, we know from ourselves that the muscle tissue, is by and large protein. So if you're having other animals' muscle tissue, you're also consuming protein. Hopefully that makes some sense. Now, you also have egg whites. You also have yogurt. Now, yogurt is a big one that people really sleep on most of the time. These days you get, all these like fancy protein yogurts, and half of the time they're fine, and half of the time it's a whole load of baloney anyway. And what I mean by that is that if you get yourself some proper strained yogurt, not yogurt style, not natural style yogurt or Greek style yogurt, anything that you see with the word style, honestly, put in a pile, burn it with hellfire. It's just marketing crap. But proper strained yogurt, whether it's Greek, whether it's skyr, quark, it's a cheese, but it's properly strained. All that stuff is very densely packed with carbohydrates, with protein per 100 grams. So, if you get yourself, and here's a pro tip, skyr tends to have similar calories, similar protein content, similar everything else content for that matter, as Greek, but for whatever reason, the supermarkets haven't quite collared onto that, so it tends to be cheaper. So a tub of total 0% yogurt will cost you, I don't know, a $5. Also, I am just plucking these numbers out of my rear end, so bear with me. But it will cost you a $5. A tub of skyr will cost you half of that, about $2.50. So, everybody else sleeping on it, you're not, because I've just told you, because you're clued up. And you're smart. You're listening to me. Hey. Anyway, so you then have protein. So you've got your carrier, and you've got, like your meat or your eggs or your tuna, or if you're vegan, some fake vegan meat or some beans. Cool, sweet, lovely. And you've got fats. Now, fats, again, I am intending to do a future episode on fats. But fats, I will just say this, they are not your enemy. You need fats for your brain function. You need fats for hormone production. You need fats to manage your cholesterol levels properly. You need fats for stuff. You need fats for your immune system. Like, you need fats, right? So don't go thinking that a low-fat diet is good for you, because, I mean, the data I've seen doesn't seem to support that. Now, fats are the most calorie dense of the 3 macronutrients, absolutely. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't eat them. So, obviously, fats, easy enough. Oils, you have certain fruit, I guess, that are high in fat, things like avocados, coconuts, stuff like that is very, very good. Nuts in and of themselves, very high in fat. Obviously, you've got nut butters. All that stuff is really, really good to keep all your system, internally, your system working how it should do. Now, that's just the sort of overview of some stuff. I've covered it off quite quickly. I haven't gone into any depth. So, you cook from scratch. You eat reasonably healthy, but you want to just take it up a notch without having to overthink. So here's the crack, right? I've got 2 rules for you that if you follow, you're going to be in the money. Number 1 is the 80-20 rule. We've all heard about it. You can apply it universally in pretty much any aspect of your life. Now, why is it important? It's important because most people don't need to be operating at 100%. What do I mean by that? Well, if you're just a normal person going by your normal day, you don't need to be tracking your calories to the minutia. If you are a bodybuilder prepping to go on stage, you do. Hopefully you see the difference. If you're an athlete preparing to go to the Olympics, then you do. If you're Betty in accounts, just preparing your lunch for the day, you don't. Like, hopefully you see that there is in fact a difference between pulling that grenade pin and going whole hog on a goal, or you just living your life. So that's important. The other thing that's important is that operating at 100% of the time takes its toll. It's tiring. It's mentally tiring. It creates mental fatigue. Hence why people don't usually do that for prolonged periods of time. It's difficult to do because your brain tires out of doing it. Now, if you can create yourself a framework that you can work within, and you know that if you operate within that framework, 80% of the time, you're going to be ticking the boxes you need to tick, but you have a little bit of room to play at the joints, well, now you can sustain that for life. So if you know that, for example, and this is an example, it's how I tend to go by my day-to-day, but if you, for example, in the week where you have routine and structure because you're going to the office and you are working, if you're not going to the office and you have to get up at X time and you have meetings in the morning and then you break for lunch for here and you get the idea. Well, you already have a structured routine, so fit your eating habits within that. Just, you can almost think of it as hyper-structuring that day. So it's not just structure around work, it's also structure around your lifestyle in those structured days. So that you know that you eat similar stuff when you're working, you know roughly the time you eat, you know where you eat, it's all like mapped out. And then at the weekends, you have a little bit more play at the joints. You still know that you need to tick some boxes, but if you go out with your friends in the evening and you have a couple of pints, doesn't matter. If you go out with your missus for some nice dinner, it doesn't matter. Now, the most boring word in nutrition, period, is moderation. And hence why I said a couple of pints and not 17 pints where you're licking your own forehead and drowning in your own vomit. Like, that wouldn't be good. You can absolutely derail your nutrition doing that. Bit of a fun anecdote. I used to have a client a couple of years ago who was about 5'4", 5'5", weighed about 65 kilos, a dude, and he would go out and do client entertainment for his job at least twice a week, sometimes 3 times a week, and he'd smash anywhere between 8 and 12 pints every time he went out. That is wild. That's like on average 30 pints in a week. I would personally, I'd be needing to have my stomach pumped. But anyway, the point is, you can obviously like overdo on the like having fun side of things, which would then take it away from the 20, right? It's no longer 20, it's now 30, 40, 50. So just bear that in mind. So that's your first rule. Create structure around your eating for 80% of that time and allow yourself a little play at the joints. You know what you're eating, but maybe you fancy a little bit of ice cream when you go out with the missus at the weekend or on a date night in the week or whatever, right? Fine. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is have a plant-led diet with enough protein. Now, I will just emphasize, if you know me personally, or if you know me at all, you will know that if personally I was to lean to either extreme, I would be way more of a carnivore than I ever would be a vegan, right? So understand when I say plant-led, I don't mean plant-centric or plant anything else, like plant only. That's not what I'm saying. But by and large, because of easy to grab foods, it's very easy to dismiss how many vegetables and fruit and legumes and all of these fun and exciting things we probably could do with eating in a day because we just don't eat them anymore. I'm sure I've mentioned this before, but the UK government tells you need to eat 5 fruit and veg a day, assuming that people will hit that. The Japanese government, I don't know if they still do, but they used to recommend you eat 17. Now, if you aim for 17 and you get 10, it's already twice as many as the 5 the UK government tells you to eat. But if they tell you to eat 5 and you get 2 or 3, you think you're doing all right. Well, you're not. Sorry. You need to have plenty of vegetables and fruit in your diet and then supplement that with protein and with fats and some carbohydrates. Your plate should always and forever be majority vegetables. So, now that I've gone off on my rant about plants, understand too, right? People will go to the supermarket and they'll buy a bag of, easy example, and this is one that happens to me personally all the time. See, people buy packs of tender stem broccoli, and it's a 200 gram bag of tender stem broccoli, and they'll split that between 3 people. What now? 200 grams of tender stem broccoli is maybe, at least it should be, maybe a portion of broccoli. Like, eat the damn thing. Make that 300 grams. And it's not that I'm like some crazy broccoli fiend, but it's that if you fill yourself up with good stuff, for one, the likelihood of you wanting to eat crap is less because you're full. Your body has all the nutrients it needs. So you're golden. That's one. Number 2, your palate changes over time. So the need for sweet stuff all the time goes away. It reduces. You don't constantly need to be having a sweet hit. Now, I will also just point out that the transition to that tends to be mildly annoying. But instead of, for example, lathering your porridge with honey or sugar or fruit compote or whatever, why not have just your porridge with maybe some dark chocolate? 20 grams of dark chocolate, 50 grams of oats, maybe 100 grams of milk, and some water if you like it slightly more runny. There you go. That's my first breakfast recommendation. There isn't a huge amount of protein there. There are some fats. You've got a little bit of protein from your milk. Got a little bit of protein from your oats. And when I say a little bit, I literally mean minor amounts. We've got some fats, you've got some carbs, you've got some fiber. You can sprinkle some blueberries in there. You don't need any sugar. You don't need any extra sweet. Now, maybe to start off with, it feels a little bit, I'm not going to say disgusting, but maybe it feels not as enjoyable, let's say. But it doesn't take a week. And you go, oh, actually, yeah, this is quite nice, actually. So making sure that you eat plenty of the good stuff will mean that your palate changes for one, over time, naturally, but you're also hitting all the stuff you need to hit in terms of micronutrients, vitamins, minerals, phytonutrients, all that good stuff. It will mean that you're getting plenty of fiber, which in and of itself will potentially reduce some brain fog. Your guts will definitely thank you for it. So those are my two main rules. Is start with plants on your plate, Go on to your protein. Plants, protein, then do the rest. And number two is have an 80-20 rule. Now here's a bonus one. And I realize that people also like to have actual recipes and, sort of multi-ingredient things to eat because it usually tastes a little nicer. But if you are trying to focus on your nutrition a little bit more, focus on having your macronutrients as single ingredient food on your plate. So what do I mean by that? Instead of having chicken casserole for your protein, have chicken breast. Instead of having, paella for your carbs and your protein and your fats, have some rice, have some fish, and then have some, nuts or avocado. Drizzle some olive oil over everything. Single ingredients, most of the time, will mean that everything just ticks on a little bit better. You know what you're putting into your face. You know what to expect. Your body will thank you for it. Everything is just a little bit easier. So that's the bonus rule. So plant-led nutrition, 80-20 rule, single ingredients. Thanks, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed the ramble. If you did, share with your friends. If anyone in the office, if you have these conversations with people in the office, then make sure to send them a link to the episode. And as always, rate us 5 stars. And I'll catch you guys next time.